It's my pleasure now to introduce the first moderator, the head of the Safety Division of the Dutch Ministry of Mobility and Transport, Ties van Zanten. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, my name is Ties van Zanten, and I'm the head of the Aviation Safety and Security Department of the Dutch Ministry, and I'm the moderator of this fantastic group of panel members. And I want to thank EASA and RAAB for the support and opportunity to have this panel. As you already know, the European regulations for operations of UAS and drones for the open and specific categories is already adopted, and the implementation works by member states, national aviation authorities, UAS operators, industry, and EASA has started. There's a lot of things that need to be put in place before June 2020. Registration systems, repository, standards for the open to obtain CE marking, standards for the zones, procedures for operational authorizations for US operations on a specific category, and training for remote pilots and operators, etc. and etc. In this panel, we discuss whether or not the existing work programs are on track and in place to start with the application of the new regulations by June 2020. I've asked our panel members to prepare a short presentation which will highlight the following questions. Why is the implementation of new EU regulations for yours important for your organization? Which parts of the implementing processes are on track in your organization, and what contributes to this success? And which parts do you see as a challenge? And after these presentations, we will discuss how we can face these challenges. But now it's time to introduce the panel members and start off with a brief statement. Jesper RASMUSSEN from EASA.
Thank you. I would say that an adequate implementation of the European regulation is absolutely vital for making Europe a leading place in the world for drone operations that are sure, that are safe, secure, and environmentally friendly.
Thank you very much, Jesper. Nicolas from the DGAC, France.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So as a national safety authority, our goal is to implement this new regulation, explain it to US operators and manufacturers, because it's not that easy, while ensuring the safety of operations, continuity of operations.
Thank you, Nicolas. Christian from DMAE.
Thank you. You can say as a drone manufacturer and drone manufacturers in general, we really believe that we want to keep democratizing the use of drones and ensuring that the air is accessible from everyone to hobbyists to the very advanced UAM operations we just saw described in the previous panel.
Thank you. Stephan from AirHuB.
Yeah, at AirHuB we believe that drones can help us solve many of the problems that we face in Europe today. Our goal at AirHuB is to safely integrate and legally and efficiently integrate drones into our society. And we hope that drones will be one day a normal tool for almost any organization. And that we can just see eVTOL aircraft flying between our cities.
Thank you, Stephan. And Christian SCHLIEFER from EUROCAE.
Yes, from a standards perspective, I think we are going in the right direction, having a risk-based and operation-centric and performance-based approach in the regulatory frame, supported by high-quality standards, which are a bit more flexible below and quicker to develop. And that's always complementary to it. We have everything in place. We are ready to go. We are ready for the new challenges ahead of us. So let's do it.
Okay, thank you. Christophe from Drone Alliance.
Yeah, good morning. I think we really have to reconcile the safety and operational requirements. That's not easy. We really have to work on it. But as Drone Alliance Europe, we think it really can be done.
Thank you very much. Those are very challenging statements. We now will move over through the presentations of the panel members, and I will ask Jesper to come.
Thank you very much.
Try to put this button, and probably your presentation comes up.
All right.
One moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the first is my main message. I'll just repeat it. We need an adequate implementation of the European regulation to achieve our objectives, to have a safe, secure, and clean drone operations in a leading EU market. We have got the EU regulation endorsed this summer. Now comes the hard work of implementation. And there are many challenges. I won't hide that. Member states, first, they have to make a transition from existing national rules, and I suppose that most, if not all, member states have national drone regulation in force right now. That has to be amended or removed, otherwise we are going to see a lot of confusion in different member states. Roles and responsibilities for oversight and enforcement and CE marking is not an easy thing, because it's not given that all this will be just transferred as other aviation legislation to be dealt with by the national authority, National Aviation Authority. It may be other national authorities dealing with CE marking and CE marking oversight, which is a whole trade in itself. So here, the government, parliament have to be very clear on how the division of work is between National Aviation Authority and possible other authorities dealing with responsibilities in this area. Registration of UAS operators and certified drones. I understand that most countries, if not all, have some kind of national registration in place right now. They have invested in IT systems and fees and charges and all this. And this is a big ship to change. You need reprogramming, so you fit into European requirements for interoperability. You need to review how people are doing the practical registration, which also may be amended. And lastly, member states will also have to define and publish geographical zones, where normally it's not only a matter for national aviation authorities, it may be a matter for environmental ministries, police, even military. So you have to work across a lot of sectors, and that the all experience is showing that that will take quite some time. Now, for the national aviation authorities, there are also some more concrete challenges. Of course, preparing for the novelties of the EU regulation goes without saying. To gather data, to assess the implementation concurrently, and give, not the least to EASA, feedback of how it's working. We have all good intentions when putting a regulation into place, but it's only when it shows into practice what kind of experience we get. Does it all work according to plan, or are there some holes or some mistakes we have to look at? And then finally, addressing national drone community to ensure compliance. We're talking about a community which are often not having its roots in the aviation sector, but coming from elsewhere, which we believe is very fine and refreshing, but it may require an extra effort to reach that community and to explain what kind of legislation is in place and how to adhere to it.
I think it's a younger audience already, yeah?
I can see that the average age in this conference, fortunately, is way below what we normally see in aviation conferences. That's good. Okay, if we change to the next slide, there are some things we are working at together with member states. We would like to have a network of aviation authorities in the drone area, focal points, so we are in close contact with all the NAAs to listen what works, where are the priorities, which stones have to be removed first, and so on. We are also working in EASA to support the development of a common unique format for the geographical zone, as Patrick Key also mentioned in his introduction. That's very important because otherwise we will have no interoperability, no common way of doing it. Then we will also do what we can to support the work of interoperability of national registration systems. As I mentioned before, it's IT investments, it's amendments of applications and all this. We are working on some AMC material which will explain some solutions in this area. Then we are working with industry to ensure timely availability of standards. Here we are not alone. We are depending also on the work in standardization bodies. And if I should say what is more pressing or urgent of these items I'm presenting here, is probably the availability and finalization of standards, which is most pressing. And then we would also like to help national authorities in how to communicate more broadly to the general public. We have safety promotion material. We will develop that, and that can be adapted and amended by different national authorities to meet exactly their target in their country.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's quite a challenge in 6 months, I think, but we're on our way. I will give word to Nicolas from the NSA France. And this is your presentation, Nicolas.
Yes, thank you. The first point, what we want to ensure, our first mission is to ensure compliance with this new regulation for us as member state, but also for US operators. Some things that Jesper mentioned already is that we also have to ensure safety promotion. We have 9,000, almost 9,000 US operators in France. Most of them only have one remote pilot, and we have to reach them in order for them to be compliant with this new regulation. We also had a quite advanced national regulation, and we have to explain all the changes and make the transition in 6 months. It's quite a challenge. Last thing, we also have to ensure continuity of operations. There are currently used national scenario, national standard scenario. Next, we will have European standard scenario, and we want to have all this operation going on after the implementation of the regulation. We also have more advanced applications, such as BVLOS long-range operations, surveillance by automatic drones on industrial sites, and all these things have to be included in the next authorizations that we will provide to the operator. And we don't want to stop that, and I don't think this is the goal of this regulation. We want to go on with this operation after the 1st of July. Yeah. Next slide. So in order to do so, we've launched a transition project at the DGAC in order first to identify all the necessary changes. So we had to read the European regulation and AMC very carefully in order to identify all the small topics, and there are many, and the devil is sometimes in the detail, and of course to implement them. One of our main issues, of course, is to ensure consistency of the national regulations. So we have to modify it. We have to remove some articles from our national regulation. We have to ensure timely provision of the registration and training tools. Of course, we have a registration portal, but there are additional requirements on this portal, so we have to implement them. We also have to ensure integration with our national security concerns, which are not covered by the EASA regulation, and explain to US operators that you may have requirements on the safety side and requirements on the security side, and also a provision of US geographical zone. We have geographical zone restrictions, but we have to provide this new information on the digital format by 2021. So this is a new challenge. And as I say, dozens of mini issues that have to be covered as well.
Yeah, quite recognizable.
So how can we work to ensure success? I think one of the main points is to ensure the share of information, the different strategies that will be used by different NAAs at national level, and the resources. So share this information with EASA and with other NAAs. I appreciate that EASA launched this network of NAA focal point on drones. I think it's a great platform to exchange on all these issues. Also, as I said, we have to reach the US operators and manufacturers, consult them. If you have a margin of interpretation of the regulations, we have to ensure that we share understanding on these issues. So the formula for success will be, well, of course, safety. It's always our first priority. Continuity of operations, going on with what we are doing today, and a shared understanding of these new rules with, between EASA, the NSAs, and the US operators.
Thank you very much. Now we go to the industry. Christian from DGAC.
Thank you.
What were your challenges?
Yeah, let's have a look at it. So first, I've put on this slide, you can say, in order to backtrack a bit, to keep in mind what are we doing, what we're actually doing. And we've got some good regulations now, and they were created for a reason. They were created to give flexibility in a world where aviation regulations are usually not very flexible, right? So we're doing this risk-based, we're doing it operation-centric, and we're doing it performance-based. But still that leaves some challenges that we are going to try to address, and especially from an industry point of view, it creates some rather big challenges. So I think if we click ahead, something pops up. Yeah, let's see how it's going to be put into practice, these concepts. And the next slide, please. So why are the new regulations important for any manufacturer, DJI, DMAE, or any drone manufacturer? If you operate in the open category, it's pretty obvious. All the items on this list are regulated in the new drone regulation. Some of them are underpinned by standards, others are directly depicted in the regulation. But before this, there was nothing. So this is why the essence of the regulation is important for drone manufacturers. We're working on all of this because it's going to have to apply on all new drones from July of next year. There is a transition period until 2022 for existing drones, et cetera, but essentially coming up with, for those of you who've been following this for a while, remote identification, geo-awareness, and then some of the, let's say, more mechanical things. That's a brand new discipline in this regulated world. Then move to the next slide, please. So the good thing is that we are on track because the development, and I've put here what's actually going on really outside any company, it's already happening. One of the big challenges is it's happening in a lot of places. So being part of the regulated EU world, there are certain bodies that can actually do the standards for this. And we've got ASD STAN. I've got colleagues heavily involved in the development of the different standards listed here. Then we've got EUROCAE that we're going to hear a bit from a bit later. On an international level, we've got ISO, we've got ASTM, something disappeared there, but everyone is touching different parts of these standards. As an industry, we have to be there because this is our future. We just saw on the previous slide, these elements of drones, these components are now going to be regulated. So we have to be involved in developing these standards. Otherwise, it's going to be left to other players, essentially, right? And then we heard this morning as well about ICAO. Yes, they take a long time, but here they've actually moved fast because they've managed to take on the recently developed drone serial number from ANSI and CTA. And then next slide, please. So what's the challenge? It's really focusing on the regulations that we've just seen this summer. If you click twice, the Delegated Act, the Implementing Act, as we've heard, approved this summer, come into force next summer, gradually phase in over the next years. We need to get these elements right, and then if you click twice, at the same time as we are preparing for the future, because we've already got EASA working on standard scenarios. If you click once, this opinion is out now, and if you click again, we've got use space coming up. So we are trying to address existing regulations that haven't even come into force yet at the same time as we are paving the road in front of us. And honestly, that is a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. And now from AirHuB, Stephan.
Yeah, I will give you a brief introduction of AirHuB. Probably most of you guys don't know us. We are a company that provides drone operation software and consultancy services. So we are actually in between the CAAs and the operators. So maybe I can shed a light on the more practical implementation of how the new how this will work for operators with the new EU regulations. As I said before, our goal at AirHuB is to safely, legally, and efficiently integrate drones and urban air mobility into our society. So we help operators getting their operational approval, but we also help, for example, the Dutch CAA to implement the new regulations. And one of the ways we do this is help the inspectorate to develop standard scenarios here in the Netherlands. Could I get the next slide? Yeah, next one. Yeah. So for us, we already see that especially the SORA and the specific category enables many new applications. So BVLOS, delivery, flights above congested areas, etc. And what we really noticed from operators, and it's both something positive but also a challenge, is that the new regulations provide a level playing field. So it opens up a huge market for these operators, but they're also afraid of the new challenges of the new regulations in a way that there's also more competition coming up. So what we now see, and especially in developing new standard scenarios in the Netherlands as well, is that operators really want to stick to what they already know, and that's also the case because a lot of standards, especially in airworthiness and operational training, that kind of stuff is still lacking. So are we on track at AirHuB? Yeah, as I said, we're in between the Civil Aviation Authority and the operators. So we have to adjust as well and to provide new products and services for our customers and clients to give them a head start in 2020. So a few examples of that are that we're now developing a online SORA tool, which will be released actually today, beta program for that. But we're also conducting tests on UTM or U-Space, especially together with LVNL here in the Netherlands, so the air traffic control, and Rijkswaterstaat, which is the governmental organization that manages the roads and the waterways. But also more on a practical note, we also develop operations manuals for operators. And yeah, now that we go from a rule-based system where it was clearly defined what was supposed to be in an operations manual, at least in the Netherlands, now we have, of course, the sales within in the SORA. So basically, we have to develop at least 6 templates for our operators so that they can operate in all the SIL categories. Yeah, so the challenges and what might be a solution. So what we really like about the new regulations is that it is a risk-based approach and that it provides this level playing field. We believe this will be game changers for the European drone industry. There are, however, some potential threats. I think a few of them have been mentioned before. But one of them is the national interpretation of rules. So we will finally get a European framework, but we still see that a lot of countries are having their own interpretation of many of the definitions and regulations within the new framework. So for example, the terms that you can find in the SORA, according to us, really need to be better defined. We really need standards on training, on airworthiness, and on zoning, so no-fly zones. And of course, the development of use space should be accelerated. And in the Netherlands, we have an expert group on drones, which is a combination between the inspectorate, the ministry, but also knowledge institutions and the operators. So we really believe that collaboration between EASA, the national CEAs, but also the industries and the knowledge institutions is key to getting this right.
Thank you very much. Christophe from Drone Alliance, Christian from SCHLIEFER, sorry.
So that's me first, yeah, thank you.
Yes, excuse me.
So just a quick introduction what the standard developing organization is. We are providing a neutral ground for the experts to meet, and that all the operators, the manufacturer, the service providers, the regulators, they all come together and sit around the table and develop a standard. So Stephan came before to me and said, we are lacking behind standards. I said, okay, that's a good hint, but are you participating in the standard developing activity? He said, no. I said, okay, you might be one of the high potentials. If you miss one, you might be one of those who should participate. So we agreed we will see us more often in the future now. So that's good. But it's also that the landscape has changed a little bit. We moved from a national regulatory frame into, Jesper said that, to a more European frame. That also means that the standardization activity is now moving to a different frame. In addition to that, conventionally, we had a different system in aviation, how we certify aircraft. Now we have the CE marking, which is something new also for the community and also for us, and that's also a challenge we are facing today. So Christian mentioned already that we have a couple of standards available today. So in some areas we are very good on track. We see good R&D activities which have very good outcomes, which are mature enough to go into the standardization area. And we call that the industrialization phase, so that we have the regulatory frame plus the required standards available. So that's not future music. We have already published a couple of standards today. This is used by the different authorities, by the different regulators as an acceptable means of compliance, as a soft law, as best industry practice. So I think we are good on track. In some areas we're really lacking behind. But again, we are, the organization itself is not developing the standards, we are providing the platform. And we have adapted our processes and procedures internally. As Patrick Key said in his introduction and statement, they have also a new system now in place to be quicker. We also try to be more agile, more quick, and keep up the pace with the innovation in the industry. But at the same time, we have to be careful. We want to keep the level of quality, and we never ever will compromise safety. So that's a goal, and that's a values we will not break. If we go to the next, we said already we had some achievements, and this is part of the contribution we had from different stakeholders. So just to mention a couple of them, detect and avoid, and we said we want to integrate all kind of drones in all airspaces. We started already with some introductional standards on detect and avoid, from IFR flights down to VLL flights, to very low level flights. So this is already available. We also have standards on highly automated functions. But EUROCAE, as an organization, we are limited to the certified category and partly to the open category. The CE marking has a special administrative requirement. I think there is something we can do a little bit better in the future in order to reduce this burden for all of us and make better use of the resources we have available today. What I also want to mention is the geofencing standard is out for open consultation. It's on our website, so if you are interested, this standard was published yesterday for open consultation. I think that's a big step forward. With the next one. So what are the challenges today? First of all, the resources. We provide the platform, but we have to make sure that we have the right expertise around the table. So I think today it's the perfect audience to make this call, saying if you are missing a standard today, you might be the right person to join us and participate that we are developing these standards. We have made some adjustments that you are not come physically. We have reduced the administrative burden to participate, to maximize the effectiveness of the experts contributing to the standard developing process. So we tried to minimize everything. We are much quicker as in the past with that. We also have to make sure that we are strong here in Europe, that we have a strong system, a strong European regulation supported with strong European standards developed by strong European industry for the European industry to be implemented. I think the challenge I have mentioned with the CE marking, we are contributing and supporting EASA with our standards since 60 years. We can support the EASA developing or certifying an Airbus 350 and 380 with 500 people on board. We can't do it for the lowest class of drones. I think we can do better, and we are here and standing by to do better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Christophe.
Yes, thank you. It seems my slides didn't make it here, but it's not a problem. I will just do it a bit differently and concentrate on 3 major points I want to bring across. When I looked originally at the title to prepare for today, Are We on Track? I was thinking so many ways you can say yes, yes and no. But I think a good image came to my mind. You know, when sometimes a challenge presents itself and we're thinking, is this a sprint or a marathon? I think what we're trying to achieve here is a sprint marathon. There's a lot on the table. We started almost from nothing. There's a lot of complicated work to do, and we're putting an extremely high speed into it, or can I say EASA and the regulators are. So I think that's a challenge. Sprint marathon, point 1. And this is why I was saying in the opening statement, to reconcile the requirements, safety first and foremost, and operational requirements, we really have to think hard, and we have to think out of the box. And I would like to make 2 concrete examples to illustrate a bit. Before saying so, I would want to say, being from industry, I can concur with a lot that Christian was saying, but no need to repeat that. So 2 concrete, but I think major examples to illustrate a bit why we need to think out of the box and maybe where that could go in creating a good and efficient regulation. So when I think at the 2 workshops that have happened at EASA on a specific and certified category, I understand in the urban context, there's the idea to have predefined routes. And I understand there's safety concerns behind it, and that's a way to prescribe to fulfill these requirements. But when we look at it, it's totally not in line with business requirements, and just doesn't correspond to the realities of how business will want to operate. So how can you bring both together? And I think here we can just use the logic that's actually inherent in the specific and certified categories. If you want to stay in the specific category, you have less of a burden to prove that you're good and you're fulfilling everything you have to so that you can operate safely, but then you're a bit more limited in the room for maneuver. If you do certified category, you have a lot heavier burden. You prove much deeper all the things you can do, and afterwards you have a bit more room for maneuver. So I think in this case, we can do the same, not prescribing, okay, this is the only way you can go, not talking predefined routes, but rather the idea of pre-assessed operational areas. And the pre-assessment is exactly what I mean. You check in much more detail, is this operator capable of really being safe, even under changing conditions there, can he prove that? And afterwards, therefore, has more room for maneuver to do the operations in the best efficient way, while all the time fulfilling the safety and environmental and noise and all the other requirements that come from the regulator. Point 2, as one example why I think we need to get maybe a bit more out of the box to bring it to a good end, fulfill all the regulatory requirements and be able to have a flourishing market at the end. The second example, and that's point 3, so for the certification of an aircraft that you want to have, how can I say? I mean, we're a bit in a hen and an egg situation all the time. Companies are developing concepts, business plans, aircrafts, everything, while looking at the regulator at the same time, okay, what kind of boundaries, what requirements are coming my way? And it's a constant exchange, of course, as well. And then some rules are defined, okay, then you have to adjust. And it goes ping pong all the time a bit, and that's a bit the procedure, and that's fine. But in this field of aircraft certification, I think we need something now, while EASA and the others are developing a certification procedure, which will still take a long time, but we need something now. So what could that be that helps, that operators can already now work against some certification? And we think here again, we need something SORA type, but a lot less heavy. Something, a checklist that you can fulfill now, that you can work, that you can do drone operations, that you can test, that you can validify, and ideally something that you would plug in later on as a module into the full SORA, but something that we're developing now in a kind of condensed way, and that will become a full-fledged module that you can add on to SORA later. So that's 3 points I wanted to make to illustrate a little bit how we try to think a bit out of the box, where we think we're running against walls or where we're getting into squeeze situations. We appreciate the hard work that's coming from EASA. We also see the high speed and pressure against it. We understand and have our business requirements and operations, and so we try to bring both together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Try to get the last slide. It's not working. Okay, thank you very much for the nice. Could you elaborate more on the statement you made in the beginning, and maybe these questions that Christophe made about something in between, not as heavy as a SORA, but a SORA light or something like that. Is it? Do you think it's possible from the regulator's point of view?
Well, let me make 2 points. First, on top of the support which I presented earlier, that we are making to facilitate implementation, we will also from summer next year start what we call standardization, and it has nothing to do, in fact, with industrial standards. It is ensuring a harmonized implementation of European legislation in all member states. So on top of the support we're giving, we also push gently but firmly our member states to ensure proper implementation in due time. We will not come out on inspections the 2nd of June, but we will probably start with a questionnaire or something like that to get an overview of the gap. And from that, we will select some areas and perhaps some member states to come on a friendly visit to hear how things are developing, to push a bit. Yeah. So
and how can the NSAs or the authorities, the member states, help you to close this gap? Because
well, the gap will probably be at member state level, legislation which is not amended, procedures which are not in place, etc., etc. We know that all member states are working on this seriously, so nobody is lenient, but we also have a feeling that it will be difficult, at least for some member states, to reach the objective by 1st of June. So we want to get an overview. What is the gap between what the rules are mandating and where member states are right now, I mean 1st of June. There will be a gap, smaller or larger. And then, of course, there will be a corrective action plan for getting things done. And it may be at the practical level, it may even be at political level, amending some legislation. And that's normal business for us and the NAA. And we try to push a bit, but we also help each other on how to attain the goals.
Okay.
So that was one point. The second point about the sprint and the marathon. It is, I mean, if you sprint too much, and that's what also I got the message from Christian STRUWE, you may not have the energy to fulfill the marathon. It's a matter of allocating resources, and where do you put it? Even a major company like DGAC, you also have limited resources. You haven't got 100 people who can enter into all kind of fora for standardization and rulemaking and all this. The same applies for EASA, for that sake. So we have to be prudent with our resources and put them where they're needed most. Now, focusing on some of the short-term possibilities, I am confident that most national authorities are focusing on this to help some of their operators to actually continue business or even trying new test or demonstration business. So we have a European legislation that will fulfill, we believe, far the most of the needs, but there are needs also in the more short term. That is acknowledged, we recognize that, but instead of making a lot of twisting around with the regulation, there are also other instruments to use. You can also use exemptions. It's not something we are extremely happy about, but it may be needed in many cases, especially when you have this fast-moving area like the drones. So I am confident that the professional people in the drone sector, together with the national authority, can find ways of far the most of these short-term challenges.
Nicolas, could you comment on this? How's
yes,
the
on both aspects. I think when we identify the gap, what's interesting, main factor is to see, is it a gap on the US operator or a gap as a national authority? The main issue that we'll have to address is the gap on the US operators, because the US operators want to comply on the 1st of July, and they will address to us in order to ensure that it's the case. So, for instance, when we are talking about the registration system, we really have to ensure that the operator will be able to be registered on the 1st of July. This is really a priority, otherwise they will be outlawed in the European regulation. A second gap we may have on this registration system is the interoperability aspect. I think we can all agree that, of course, we should comply with that on the 1st of July, but if it's not the case, it's something that we can work on a bit later. This is just a small example about the criticity of some of the gaps that we identify. The second thing is that, as I said, we really want to ensure that the operations that we are doing right now can continue after the 1st of July. And we have more and more advanced operations. I was talking about the BVLOS long-range operations. In France, we have a standard scenario, where you can do that on a declarative basis. We won't be able to go on after the 1st of July. It's not compliant with European regulation, but we have to find a way to continue this operation on an authorization basis, but we have to make it quick and efficient.
And do you see any cooperation between the member states? Because you're telling us in France, or ahead with the Netherlands,
yes,
we were in Germany, everywhere we're doing.
Yes, and there are several member states working on these topics. An interesting point that was mentioned, I don't know by whom, is the predefined risk assessment. It's something that EASA is working on. That means that in order to make the work easier for the US operator for advanced application, there are predefined risk assessments that are prepared by EASA in collaborations with the different member states in order just to have a list of technical and operational requirements that US operators can comply with easily in order to say, okay, I comply with this SORA, with this predefined risk assessment, and you can authorize me. And it's also a very efficient tool to guarantee that all the member states will deal with the same advanced issue with the same references,
field,
same references. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Well, I see one of the questions, since I have one of the questions on Slido, which is on the common training for the open category. I just wanted to react on this one because we have this the same concern to ensure that the training in the open category will be about the same level in all the member states. In the scope of a network of NA focal point, we've started a task force on this topic. We will first share questions between the different member states, and in order to align them and to ensure the same level. I just wanted to react on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. When I take a question from the Slido, why doesn't EASA have a registration database instead of forcing every member state to create their own database that has to communicate via EASA? We have 9 hits on that one. Is there something we can elaborate on?
Well, the implementing rule is as it is.
Yeah.
So I mean that we're past this discussion. Yeah. And could you dream of something different? Yeah, perhaps, but that's for the far future. So the task ahead, and that's addressed by the second one, if I may, is to make the current system with national databases work in an interoperable way, and that's going to be a challenge. If we can deliver, how much can we deliver in draft format before Q4? I'm not, as we speak, sure how much we can deliver, but we will have these discussions in the fora for NAAs, how we remove the stones on the road in the right sequence.
Yeah, thank you. Another question from Antonia Mota: how we can ensure training of remote pilots in the open category to be performed homogeneously across Europe? That's the question you already. What's the plan for France for closing the gap of the upcoming law?
I was expecting this one.
Yeah. Anonymous. Anonymous question.
Thank you for the question. The electronic ID is something that was included in a law that was published in 2016, and we were expecting the application text to be published earlier, maybe in 2017 and 2018, in order not to be in the current situation. So we are here today. It's something that's not really on DGAC, actually, not on the CA. It's more on our security authority. But it's quite obvious that we'll have to ensure that our national law will remain compliant with the future standards. So I think one way to do so is to modify our text quite quickly. We may have 6 months to do so, modify our text in order to ensure that, of course, the remote ID, the standard that will be published in Europe, will allow to be compliant to national law.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Stephan. I would like to ask Mr. van VUREN, one moment. What role does 5G in connecting the drones, and how far is the development currently on 5G on drones? Could you elaborate more?
Yeah, so that's something we're actually working on with KPN International, the Dutch telecom provider. We believe that 5G will be very important also for remote ID, but also for command and control of drones, and especially in the use cases that we will see now with the new legislation coming up. So BVLOS, and especially BVLOS in urban areas. The rollout of 5G, of course, is planned for next year, and it's a little bit scattered across Europe, the implementation, but I think once it's there, it will be a crucial thing for a lot of operators to have this fast and low latency mobile network.
Okay, thank you very much. Question from Jacob Kraus. When can we expect AMC's and guidance related to geographical zones? That's,
well, I must confess, I
Yeah.
don't have the exact date
No.
on top of my head. Again, my answer would be that we will remove the stones in the right sequence, and this is one of them. I understand that we are quite far in developing this, but I have to wait, given the exact dates. I'll have to ask some of the experts.
Thank you very much. Christian from EUROCAE, you were just telling in the preparation that how are we preparing is when you compare this to other countries. How has this been done in the USA? Are we lacking, or are we on pace? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I assume you're relating to this question why that the standard on remote ID to be adopted in Europe would be an American-led ASTM standard not being validated in Europe. It's true, at the beginning, as I said, we have a different system. There was a little bit an uncertainty. The industry didn't know exactly where to go to have the right work done at the right place, so that it's also then compliant with the regulatory frame. So we were a little bit slower here, and the Americans started, ASTM, they started to develop this standard very quickly, very tailored, and very focused on one particular problem to solve. So they were much quicker in that. I think that's something we can learn from, and we can do much better in the future. And I think there should be at least something we in Europe, I don't say we should do in Europe. We can do that with other standard developing organizations together. That's what we're doing in certified category of aircraft since many, many years, and that's a win-win situation for global harmonization, but it needs to be balanced in different regions. That's true.
Thank you. Christian from DGI, how's the industry preparing for the implementation of the regulation? Could you elaborate more on this question?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
especially to the CE marking.
What I've outlined is that right now it's about getting the standards in place, so we can fulfill the CE marking requirements. Once that is done, you can say, and only once we've got very mature drafts of the different standards, then we can actually start doing our internal compliance work. Obviously, we've got some sense of direction of where things are going, so we are busy preparing for it. And we've got one of the questions on Slido relating to this as well. With the standards, does this mean every drone will have to meet these requirements for any end use? So you can say, once we get to next summer, and you can only sell drones or new models of drones that have a specific CE mark, then in the open category at least, the operational envelope for those kind of drones is already given. If you go out and buy a C1 drone or a C3 drone, that comes with a specific set of operational restrictions. So really depending on what you do here, what kind of drone you can, your operations defined. And obviously, as any manufacturer has an interest in living up to these different kind of niches. So we are following this very closely, but right now it's really dependent on the development of the standards. And then obviously, knowing standards are an option to achieve compliance, there is let's say there is a decision point somewhere in the spring next year that if the standards are still too far away, then we're going to have to look for CE compliance elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Time is running up already. We still have 5 minutes. Are there some real issues you will still mention over here? Also, will summarize. No? Thank you. We got not prepared all this question. We could answer all these questions, but we'll see if we can do this later. I will do a summary. There are big challenges. How to face these challenges. Proposals of the group are sharing information, strategy and resources with the EASA and other NAAs, US operators and manufacturers, consultation and information, and build upon the state-of-art expertise for its members and address the global aviation challenges. EC and EASA are working closely with the member states and the stakeholders, developing a network of NNA US focal points and safety promotion network, which also enable exchange for the best practices, supporting the development of common unique format for EAS geographical zones, supporting the work of interoperability of national registration systems, working with industry to ensure timely availability of standards, and communicating to address the general public. We can only face these challenges if we face them together and in good cooperation with the EASA, member states, industry, and the general public. This is enough to discuss during lunch, I think. I want to thank the panel members, Jesper, Christophe, Christian, Nicolas, Stephan, Christian, and Maria for the effort and for your attention. Thank you very much.
Just before the lunch break, we wanted to ask for 2 minutes of your time to show what is our brand new video, apart from the sneak peek that some of you got during the coffee break, which is for promotion, safety promotion in the open category of drones. Internally, we're calling this video Donnie and Paul.
Hey, so you're my new pilot.
Wow, unbelievable.
Before we can hit the skies, you've got some stuff to do. You need to register online, complete the training, and pass the test. Wow, that was easy. You're not just a pretty face. Good that you check beforehand where we can and cannot fly.
Oh, sorry.
Even a smart guy like you knows better. Read the manual. You want to fly me or not? Ouch, Paul. Are you serious? Keep me in sight, always. You don't want to lose me. Are you nuts? Don't fly me higher than 120 meters. And not too close to other objects, to airports, or over groups of people.
Okay, I understand. Oh, cool, a pool party.
Ouch! That's not funny, Paul. We can't take photos or videos of people without their permission. Flying a drone is really fun and not so complicated if you follow some rules. Register yourself, check where you can fly, keep the drone in sight, and do not fly above 120 meters or close to obstacles and airports. And do not invade privacy. Then, you're a really good pilot.
Okay. Thank you for that response. Enjoy your lunch and please be back at 1400.